welcome to another episode of Aloha Authentic with Kamakapili, Hawaii's only TV show where we feature our own local artisans, our culture practitioners, our kupuna, and our community members around the islands to capture their story, capture their mo'olelo, their experience, and their knowledge to share with you in the comfort of your own home. Hopefully we can perpetuate that knowledge into future generations. So today we're super stoked. We're here on location in Makaha here on Oahu to talk with a very, very special lady when it comes to the world of kapa, Aunty Dalani. Aloha, Auntie.
Aloha.
Mahalo nui for taking the time and inviting us to your house and in this beautiful side of Makaha on the west side, where I'm an east side boy, so you don't have the opportunity very much to come out on
to
this
dry
side.
out. Yeah.
With all the moisture in the air to kind of, dry out. But we're here to talk about kapa and the world of kapa. Now, if you haven't heard about kapa, this episode is perfect for you, so you can learn a little bit about it, and hopefully it sparks some interest for you to turn around and find out more. And with a little bit time on our hands, we're just going to get straight into it. So, Aunty Dalani, can you just share a little bit of what kapa is?
So kapa is it's one of the names for the native bark cloth that was used in Polynesia for their clothing and anything you think of using fabric for. Blankets. It was also used for gifts, for taxes, for tributes, things like this. It caught the newborn babies and it wrapped up the bones of the people who had passed on and everything in between that. So it was pretty much to steal the cotton industry's tagline, "The fabric of our lives," came from kapa, which is from the Wauke tree.
Mm-hmm. So that's what's behind us. Is the
yeah,
Wauke,
behind us is part of our
huge,
little group.
beautiful patch, by the way. I love it. So it gives us perfect background too. So it comes from the bark.
From the inner bark of that tree. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So is kapa only made from Wauke, or can you make it from other plants?
Wauke was the favorite one and made the best kapa, but the art itself is a global art. Mm-hmm. And I was just looking at an article about a particular place in Africa where they use the banyan tree, and it's completely different because you think of banyan trees, and so they're actually kind of younger trees, but that tree, they will do like what we do, scrape off the outside bark, and then they'll make a cut under the leaf line and a cut above the root line and a cut like that, and you remember, and then they'll just peel that thing off. Then they'll wrap banana leaves all the way around the tree and the bark will grow back.
Wow, like a Band-Aid.
Yeah, like a big giant Band-Aid. It was really cool. And ours we don't. As you know, we cut them right down, but as you can see from this patch, which started out as just like 20 trees and there's now just hundreds and hundreds, the paper mulberry tree will send out root runners and then they'll all grow back again. Mm-hmm. So, but other trees that they use in Polynesia were like the ulu tree, breadfruit, mamaki also was used. In the Marquesas, they did use banyan. It's a sacred tree down there. And then there was they talked about other things, different types of hibiscus and things that have this kind of flexible inner bark that you can use. Mm-hmm. Not all trees have a bark that you can peel off that way, and so it is kind of limited in what they could use.
Mm-hmm. Well, just within the past couple minutes, you sound like you're so knowledgeable and in-depth with this practice. Can you share a little bit about your background and where you came from and how you got into this art?
Well, I grew up in San Diego, and but San Diego has a lot of Hawaiians, and they had a really good Hawaiian Civic Club. And so even from living there and everything, we were able to dance hula and go to luau's and learn our pi'apa and all this kind of thing. But then my mother is from Waikapu and Wailuku, and then her parents had moved to Laie. And so we had a lot of family here, and so we would come here just about every year, back when it was fun to fly, to visit them. And so I always loved it here so much, and so I was always very close to my Hawaiian culture. And I moved here after I finished high school. I came here, got married, and was going to BYU Hawaii, and I was in a Hawaiian language class. And I think we went to Bishop Museum, but that was the first time I saw Hawaiian kapa. I had a huge Tongan kapa that was given to me as a wedding present, and I knew that. And actually, in fourth grade in San Diego, we learned how to make tapa cloth using the brown paper bags, and that's what a lot of people tell me, right? With the crayons, they ironed it, softened it. And I was like, wow, maybe I was destined to do this. I still remember my brown paper bag, but I'm sure it looked very Samoan, or that brown and black and big geometric thing that we're used to. And when I saw this Hawaiian ones in the museum, I kind of thought, well, now that's different. I had never seen that, and it was so very different. I was quite taken with it, and as an artist in a lot of different medium, even at that time, I thought maybe this is something I would like to learn. But of course, at that time we had no Mr. Google, and how do we find anything or do anything? So it took 15 years before I actually got to start doing something. And there was a Kuku Kapa named Kawaiian Wauke who was teaching tool making classes. And she was going all over, not only Hawaii, but also the United States, and teaching, finding groups of Hawaiians who wanted to learn. And so we made our kapa beaters. And I remember, I literally can feel how happy I was, remembering that I was like, oh, I can finally start learning to make kapa, oh my gosh. And we spent a whole weekend down in Nanakuli, sitting on the curb with chisels and stuff and cutting up our beaters. And at the end, she gave us some little baby trees, and we had our tools, and she said, well, thanks for coming and good luck, Anya. And he was like, no, please come back. And I was really kind of devastated, because I thought we were going to learn to make kapa. Later on, when I became part of the Kapa Coven, and I asked her about that, and she said, well, my feeling was that if I gave you the tools and I gave you the plants, the responsibility was yours to go get more. I wasn't going to give you everything. And I know that most of those tools ended up being meat tenderizers, or hold the door open, or threaten the children, because there was so much that went along with that. It's not just about knowing how to pound kapa. It's not just about having tools. It is a huge entity, the making of kapa, like all of our arts are. All our arts are these giant entities. Yeah, you can go take a class from somebody for an hour or two or something, but you will never understand until you follow it from the growing the plants, to the tools, to all the nuances of the art itself, to understand what a huge thing these are, and why in general there are not a lot of people who do a lot of the arts in their full form. The feather makers, well, of course they cannot make capes like the old days, because they cannot catch those birds, because there aren't anymore. They have to use something else. So that kind of takes a whole piece out of that whole thing of, there were guys who were bird catchers. That's what they did. It was their job. They couldn't kill the birds. The birds have 4 little feathers, and so you couldn't kill them, but you had to know them and follow them. And I don't know if they made friends with them. Hey, come on over, I'll feed you. Leave me those feathers. Go back, grow some more. See you next year. So that part of it was all kind of crazy. And auspiciously, after I had learned that, that's when I met Eric Enos from Ka'ala Farm. And they had just finished writing an entire curriculum on teaching kapa, and they had a mountain full of Wauke trees, and they had a workshop full of tools to make more tools, and they had a classroom down at Nani Kapono with a teacher who baked lemon bars whenever we came, and it was like kapa maker's paradise. And literally so they hired me to teach kapa. He knew I was doing this. We were doing the restoration of Kaneaki Heiau at the time, and that was the same time that my trees that Kawai had given me had matured. And I had been reading about it, because there was no one, I didn't know anyone to ask. And I cut the trees and did everything and put them in the river, and was just feeling all like so cultural and Hawaiian. Here's my Wauke trees in the river. And so he saw me doing this, and so they managed to just kind of reel me in. And I told them straight out, I said, okay, well, this sounds really awesome, but there's 2 things. I know jack about kapa, really, and I am terrified of speaking in front of people publicly. So they were like, don't worry, you'll be fine, we'll be right there. And so 4th graders, they are an unmerciful bunch, when you're teaching them. But I got over my shyness kind of, and now they're like, please make her stop talking. And I'm still, but kapa, let me tell you more.
We don't have enough time in the day.
Yeah, we're finished. So yeah, and so we were able to kill 2 birds right there. I was able to finally learn kapa, and learning that way as a teacher was really what made a huge difference in how I approached it. Because in our family, everyone was teachers, and my mom was a teacher, and I always swore, how you watch your parents and you say, I will never. And you are exactly like them. And I ended up being a teacher, but as a teacher, I would always watch what the kids were doing. And so we started making tools that look like the ones in Bishop Museum, and they're huge and they're heavy. The woods are heavy and all this stuff. And I'm watching the kids and they're like, this is so heavy, I'm so tired. You know, they have a piece that big, they're pounding and they're like, oh. So go back to the workshop, make all new tools, make them all smaller, make them all something, carve them all up, bring them all back. I also got to learn how to do a lot of tool making, and I got to learn woodworking, you know, more woodworking skills and things like this. So I was able to do a lot of things in a broader scale because of that teaching that I probably wouldn't have done if I was just learning it for myself. Mm-hmm. You know, once you make a beater, you're fine. You think you're fine, you know, you do that. But once you're making 30 and 60 and whatever beaters, and then, hey, let's make kits for the kupuna. Okay, make more tools for them. Mm-hmm. Once you gotta gather stones, once you gotta find stuff for dye material, it takes you further and further out, which is only good for you because, you know, you just learn more. So yeah.
You for one art, I heard you talk about wood, the type of implements. I'm sure the stones that you first start off with pounding with, the dyes, the plants that you need to know. So for this one practice, like you mentioned, it's such a really big, huge entity. Right. How much different pieces of this puzzle really are there?
Well, I'll tie it into the answer of why I still do this after almost 25 years. As an artist, you know, when people find out you're an artist, hey, can you draw this for me? Yeah. Hey, can you make this for me? Hey, can you do this for me? And you know, I'm pretty good at the things I did. And so people said, wow, you should do this. You should do this as a business for a living. And I was like, you know, if I had to wake up every day and be creative, I like to be creative like an artist, like, how am I feeling today? What do I want to create? I don't know. And not like, oh, I got to wake up and create something today. Yeah. You know, that, which actually, as you know, we do have to get up and go, just make it. Fake it till you make it, or just make it. Mm-hmm. But in the art of Kapa, because there were so many arts, that anytime you felt like, I don't want to do that one right now, there was something else to do. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the botany and the ethnobotany of it is such a thing. I mean, when people started trying to revive the art of Kapa making, they couldn't even find Wauke, which every family would have been growing back in the day, because, you know, the men in your family would have taken care of it. And but as people were moved off the land, and as the land was taken over by all these other things, and as people stopped making Kapa, there was just no reason to have it. And the Wauke tree did not just grow wild randomly. So people had a hard time. Pua Van Dorp, who was one of the pioneers of reviving the art, she, you know, talked about having to be repelled down into Iao Valley, where they saw some little scrappy little patch, and, you know, bringing the babies back up and getting those growing again. So, you know, even that was a trial. And so you've got that part, and trying to grow good trees to create good Kapa, because that's where it all starts. If you don't have the Wauke, you don't have Kapa. Yeah, you can go find a banyan tree or whatever, but, you know, if you want to do nice and Hawaiian and whatever, that's the one you want. So you get that. Then you start, you know, you have to make your tools. Well, the tools that they actually have in the museum are all rare endangered woods that you really just can't run out and get. So as a teacher now teaching people who want to do this, who read in the old books, oh, it was, you know, Kawila, and, you know, look, the Ohia all sick now. And look, all these things. Well, what can we use? How about that albizia? Will that work? How about every time somebody cuts down a mango tree, can we get it? Or those monkey pod trees, can we use it? So now we have to kind of keep looking outside of the box to recreate this ancient art, but now recreating it in this innovative new ways. So you have all of that kind of thing with the plants and the tool making. And I mean, guys now make those tools using AutoCAD. You know, just put them in the CDC machine and there you go. And, you know, I have a few, and I don't know, they act a little bit different.
What's your opinion between a machine-made beater and a handmade?
One of my friends is a woodworker, and he was making kuku as table legs. The tables were awesome, so he goes, here, try this. I was like, okay. And I was like, you know, we could probably work it a little bit better. And there's just something about, but then Umi Kai gave me a replica of one from the museum, and it was like cast, you know, out of that kind of polymer resin thing. And I was like, man, if I could do this with all the beaters in the museum, because, oh, they're so fine, and they're just such a ano to them, you know, that's so interesting when you work with them. That's hard to recreate. But so you have that, and the tools and the plants, and then you have the, you know, the teaching aspect, which is part of what I've always done. And when we do it, and, you know, and so people, don't know, here's the kapa, they're looking at that, and here's this tree, how's it going to be done? And you strip the skin off, and then you make that cut. And when you peel that thing off, and maybe you remember experiencing this, but people go, oh, like it's just the most amazing thing. We live in a time of just every crazy, amazing technological thing, and people still go, wow, when you peel skin off a tree.
So true.
And and I never get over that. I love that so much. So that part of teaching, and whether people feel like this is my new life's goal, I'm going to be a kapa maker, or whether it's part of their bucket list, or they just want to be an informed Hawaiian and knew what our ancestors did, it's all good to me. My thing is teaching it. It was an art that wasn't lost. They put it aside, and they had their reasons. It wasn't taken. It wasn't destroyed. It was put aside, and now it's back.
Why would you say it was put aside?
Well, when I ask people why did they stop making it, if we went to Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, a bunch of these little islands, they're still making it to lesser degrees, of course, but still ancestrally taught. They still learned it from a kupuna who taught somebody in an unbroken line. Okay, we didn't have that. So when Hawaiians and Polynesians in general, when they saw fabric, they were pretty impressed. If you look at ali'i of any culture, they're the ones with all the best clothes, right? Yeah. Well, when they saw these guys show up on the ships, and they got that fancy tricorn hat, and they got those jackets and those little things, and their medals and stuff, and their boots and their everything,
all duped out.
They were like, whoa. And so you see King Kamehameha in that portrait in his red cloth vest. He loved it. The other thing that began to happen, why the ali'i especially started dressing, was because as all these people are showing up on our shores going, what a beautiful little islands you have, perhaps we can do something together. Well, why Kalakaua went out to travel was to create treaties with other countries to recognize our sovereignty. Well, they weren't going to show up wearing their malo and their feather capes. Although, actually they did. I think sometimes they did wear their feather capes, and that's why there's feather capes all over the world in museums. But so they started wearing clothing, a lot for those purposes. The missionaries didn't get here till the 1820s, 30s, but there was already a lot of, cultural exchanges going on between Europe and between China, because we were now part of that trade route. And when things came, the elite were like, yeah, take that. Oh, pay you with sandalwood. So you really get into these huge historical things that were happening. And when we talk about why did people stop wearing kapa, everyone always jumps to the missionary thing, but that was kind of later. People were already switching over. At the same time, there were still people who were making kapa, and because of Western influence, they saw the fabric and they went, wow, this is really nice and thin. Hey, can we make the kapa like this? And so then they started changing the manufacture of their kapa, and they saw designs, and they're like, wow, we like these designs. How can we reinterpret this? And then they started doing the ohe kapala, because the pre-cooked kapa was very different. If you look at the collections that he picked up, they aren't the ohe kapala kind of things. If they did printing, it's because they found some cool thing on the ground and printed with it. When they got metal, they were able to make, if you've ever seen the collection of ohe kapala at Bishop Museum, those things are so tiny, fine. And even with the tiniest shark's tooth or piece of obsidian and all the time in the world, okay, maybe you still could, but so much easier if you had a piece of metal, even if it was just a nail that you sharpened down, So there was a lot of this technological advances in that. At the same time, people were dressing. At the same time, people were learning to read, hence most literate country in the world. And there was just so much happening here that wasn't necessarily happening in other places. Where the Tongans, they were a monarchy, became a Christian country, but never stopped making their ngatu. They always had it, still have it, still make it. Samoa, same thing. Fiji, same thing. What was it within them that they said, well, no, we'll keep this, we'll keep doing it? And Hawaiians were like, yep, nope, we're done. And the interesting part is that even as we researched kapa, all of the older materials written by people who actually saw it was written by male observers. Now, thank you, because we did need to see this kind of stuff. Kahana kapa, that's kind of one of the Bibles, because he just wrote all this information about it. But none of the Hawaiian women wrote anything about it. I'm still hoping something will come out of the Hawaiian language newspapers.
So this practice was really only done by women?
it was done, that was mostly their job because the men had so many other jobs, as you know. Build canoes, build the hales, go fishing, build the 2 emus to make the 2 meals because the men and women's food was cooked separately. So they were very busy. Women, we also had babies. Babies should just kind of be kind of mellow in one place. When you are with all your women in your kauhale and all your ohana, and all the babies have every woman they love best right there, mom's busy, oh, there's grandma, and my other grandma, and my auntie, and my whoever. So it actually worked out very well, you know, community-wise, because the children were all being cared for right there by all the women, you know, who love them, while the men were out doing their manly things. So not to say that men didn't. I haven't really read a whole lot about it, but I'm sure if there was people who couldn't or wanted to or would be involved in some part. But you know, even men involved in kapa was taking care of the trees, making the tools. Maybe they sent them out to gather dye materials, things like that. So it was really a very village, family-oriented art. A lot of people were involved in making it.
So for you, after all these years, you say 25 years or so you've been doing this, what has been, aside from actually just practicing and doing it, what other things have you learned from this practice? I mean, I'm sure sitting down at the same spot pounding for hours and hours, one, I'm sure you learned a lot of patience, but what in more detail do you really walk away from this practice?
But you know, I wish I was sitting all day pounding kapa. That would be the easy part of it. What became crazy was when you know, it's my business now since 2008. I created a business called Kapa Hawaii LLC. And that was after all my years at Ka'ala Farm. And I tend to think of myself as having this business since then, but in reality, kapa has always been my professional career. I've been a professional kapa maker and instructor for this whole time. And in it, you know, again, even when you sent me the list of questions, I went, okay, well, this is nothing strange, new questions. They're the same questions I get asked. But in answering those questions, I always have to question myself, why do I answer this? Do I have new information yet? Has somebody told me something else? I've gone all over the place. You know, we've been in South Pacific and we've been to Japan and, you know, Washington, D.C. and all over the place. And people will come up from all different kind of things and have a question or have information or tell me a story. And I'm like, that's going to be part of my narrative now. And so my narrative will always be open to change as I receive new information about something that I, you know, really didn't know anything about. And that's been really exciting to me. And, you know, I'm trying to finish, I'm in the fifth year of the 2-year associate degree program. So, you know, when you're older and trying to work and all this kind of stuff.
As a teacher, you're always a student.
You're always a student. Yep, always a student. And, you know, I was able to take a bunch of, this past semester, I took ethnobotany, Hawaiian literature, and Hawaiian mythology. And every single one of those classes had information I was able to pull into my narrative. So my narrative, you know, my teaching, what I tell people about kapa, just keeps growing and remolding and all these kind of things. And that's been a really exciting part, just all this learning about, you know, more things about the kapa, but about the kapa, you know, as through the lens of the history, of the mythology, of, you know, everything our people did back in those times. It's really, really fascinating.
What would you like, in just a couple sentences, as a message from this art, from your expertise, for those who may be interested or who have dabbled with it a little bit and are pondering if they want to continue, what message would you like them to walk away with from listening to you?
I will tell you this one thing. Grow Wauke, then come see me. Or the kumu of your choice. Because this is the important part right here, is to have these trees. You need trees, call me. I will get you trees. You can start. It's a commitment and it's a kuleana. So don't even mess around. It's not part of your Hawaiian garden. They will take over your garden. They will grow through the asphalt, in the cement, in the neighbor's yard, somewhere down the road. They don't care. But if you are ready to take that step, then we can certainly get people going. But that's the thing, is those trees. The trees take 9 months to a year to mature. You got all that time to do everything else you need to do, so it's all good.
Awesome. So with that, I'm assuming, you know, and that revolves around the care, the respect, the aloha you have for the simplicity, for the basics of the practice.
Yeah.
For you, what is aloha? What does that mean to you?
You know, I was thinking of that question. I had to write a whole thing about it for a book one time, and I was like, what does aloha? And I remember my grandma's at that time. But I think what we notice most about aloha is the absence of it. And you know, here in Hawaii, one of the things that's so cool about us is that when we drive, even though it's like bad drivers, but we're always like, go brah, thank you. What's up? Hey, yeah, go ahead, Auntie, walk across. Okay, yeah, hey, brother. We are always this so interactive thing. And you know, if you go other places and do that, you cannot do that.
Yeah.
I went to Egypt. My husband was from Egypt, and somebody stopped to let us go. And I went, you know, hey, thank you. And he goes, don't do that. I go, why? He goes, they're going to follow you home. Nobody waves to people when they do. I go, we do. We wave and we hug and you know, that's such an aloha thing, just to be thinking about other people and to make other people feel like, yeah, no, it's okay. I can wait for you. I'm not in this rush. I'm not hurrying. I'm not leaning on my horn. Yeah, go. I'll wait for you to walk across the street. No, Auntie, take your time. You know, and it's just so funny. That's just so evident in our driving patterns that you will not find that anywhere else. That is really
Only here.
Kind of a random thing, but I think about that every time I drive, when somebody lets me go or I let somebody walk, or waving to my friend, hey, what's up? I always have the window down, what's up? That's just aloha, just that thinking of other people, you know.
Well, we've went by so fast. I swear, this is going to have to start to turn into 1 hour episodes, because these half hours just goes by in the blink of an eye. But for people who want to find out more about you or with Kapa, where can they find you? You have a website?
I have a website, yeah. You can go to kapahawaii.com. If you need me for something, my email is kapahawaii@gmail.com. And then I have another site. It's mostly built, but it's kind of a newer, more updated site, and it's hawaiiankapa.com. Yeah, we just totally took the market on all those Hawaii Kapa thing.com.
Awesome. Well, go check it out, and if you have any questions, feel free to email Auntie. Of course, you can always email us here at Aloha Authentic, kamakapili@aloha.authentic.org. But as we're closing out the show, just remember, these episodes air the first Friday of every month on Olelo Channel 53 at 6:30 in the evening. Replays itself for the remaining of the month on the Saturdays, excluding the 5th Saturdays. That means not including the 5th Saturdays. Excluding, that's a really big word. And also online at alohaAuthentic.org, as well as our weekly segment on KHON2 every Thursday morning at 8:40. On the Take 2 show for KHON2, we're talking about Oahu street names, as well as growing into other islands eventually. So always just trying to continue the education and the perpetuation of our history and our culture, of our unique people here, the Hawaiian people in our homelands, the islands of Hawaii. Well, mahalo, Auntie. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for coming.
Mahalo for you guys for tuning in. And again, until next time, aloha, ahuiho.
Aloha.